The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They built telescopes. They sent probes. They dreamed of the day when they would finally leave their small blue world and join the universe. That day came on a cold morning in December when the research ship Horizon detected a signal. It was not random noise. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was a beacon repeating the same message over and over in mathematical patterns that could only come from intelligent life. Captain Jinwoo Park stood on the bridge of the Horizon and stared at the data on his screen. His heart was beating fast, but his face remained calm. He had trained his whole life for moments like this. He was 42 years old, with gray starting to show at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of hard decisions. But today, he felt like a child again, full of wonder. "It is real," said Dr. Hannah Yoon, the ship's chief scientist. She was younger than Jinwoo, with sharp eyes and quick hands that moved across her console like a pianist playing music. "The signal contains coordinates. It is an invitation." Lieutenant Taiwu Shin leaned forward from his station. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a scar on his chin from an accident years ago. An invitation to what? Hannah looked at him. To meet them, whoever they are. The news spread across Earth within hours. Governments argued. Scientists debated. Religious leaders prayed. But in the end, humanity made a choice. They would answer the call. It took 6 months to prepare. Earth's nations came together in a way they never had before. They pooled their resources, their technology, their brightest minds. They built a new engine based on the mathematical principles hidden in the alien signal. And when they were ready, the Horizon set out on a journey that would change everything. Jinwoo watched Earth grow smaller in the rear cameras. His crew of 50 sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Pilot Yoonji Beek kept her hands steady on the controls, guiding them toward the unknown. She was the best pilot Earth had ever produced, and she flew with the confidence of someone who trusted herself completely. The jump was strange. One moment they were in familiar space, surrounded by planets they had known their whole lives. The next moment, they were somewhere else entirely. Stars they did not recognize filled the view screen. Colors they had no names for painted the void. "We made it," Taiwu whispered. Ahead of them floated a structure so large it made their ship look like a grain of sand. It was a station built from materials that gleamed like liquid metal, with towers and domes and lights that pulsed in rhythms that seemed almost alive. Ships of every shape and size moved around it like fish around a reef, the Citadel Hannah said, reading the data her instruments were collecting. "That is what they call it. It is the home of something called the Galactic Council." Jinwoo nodded slowly. "Then that is where we go." Docking took hours. The station's systems did not recognize their ship, and they had to wait while alien officials processed their arrival. When the doors finally opened, Jinwoo led his team out into a world that made them feel very small. The corridors were filled with beings, like anything they had imagined. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6 or more. Some floated. Some crawled. Colors and shapes and sounds filled every corner. And everywhere they went, eyes turned to look at them with expressions they could not read. Taiwu stayed close to Jinwoo's side, his hand near his weapon, even though he knew it would be useless against most of these creatures. "They are staring at us." "Let them stare," Jinwoo said quietly. "We are not here to fight. We are here to talk." Creature approached them. It was tall and thin, with blue skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. It wore robes that flowed like water, and when it spoke, the words came through a small device that translated them into sounds the humans could understand. "You are the ones from the New World," the creature said. "The ones who answered the beacon." "We are," Jinwoo replied. "We come from a planet called Earth. We are here to speak with your leaders." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Our leaders do not speak with every species that stumbles upon our signal. You will need to prove your worth." Hannah stepped forward. "How do we do that?" "You petition the council. You explain why your species deserves a place among the stars, and then the council decides." The creature turned and began walking away. Follow me. I will take you to the chamber. The council chamber was the largest room Jinwoo had ever seen. It stretched upward like a cathedral, with seats carved into the walls where hundreds of alien representatives sat watching. At the center was a raised platform where the high counselors sat in judgment. The highest seat belonged to a creature called Vorath. He was reptilian, with scales that shifted between green and gold, and eyes that held no warmth. He looked down at the humans the way a person might look at insects. Jinwoo walked to the center of the chamber. His crew stood behind him. He could feel their fear, but also their hope. He carried the weight of 8 billion people on his shoulders. He cleared his throat and spoke. My name is Jinwoo Park. I speak for the people of Earth. We have traveled far to be here today. We come with open hands and open hearts. We ask only for the chance to join your council, to learn from you, and to share what we have to offer. He paused, looking around at the hundreds of faces watching him. We know we are young. We know we are small. But we believe that every species deserves a chance to grow. We ask for your friendship, your protection, and your wisdom. The chamber was silent. Then High Counselor Vorath leaned forward, and his mouth twisted into something that was almost a smile, and he laughed. The sound of Vorath's laughter filled the chamber like poison filling a wound. It started low and grew louder, bouncing off the high walls and echoing back until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Other counselors joined in. Some chuckled politely. Others made sounds that their species used to show amusement. A few simply shook their heads, looking at the humans with pity. Jinwoo stood perfectly still. His hands remained at his sides. His face showed nothing, but inside, he felt something cold settle in his chest. He had hoped for so much. He had believed that the universe would welcome them. He had been wrong. Vorath raised one clawed hand, and the laughter slowly died down. He leaned back in his seat and looked at Jinwoo the way a teacher might look at a student who had said something foolish. You ask for friendship, Vorath said. His voice was smooth and deep, translated perfectly through the chamber's systems. You ask for protection. You ask for wisdom. He paused. But what do you offer in return? What does your little world have that we could possibly want? Ambassador Telex, who sat at Vorath's right side, spoke next. He was a creature with gray skin and 4 arms, and his face was sharp like a blade. Your species is barely 1,000 years old by our standards. You have only just learned to leave your own atmosphere. You fight wars among yourselves over patches of dirt and puddles of water. Hannah translated everything for the crew, her voice tight with controlled anger. Taiwu's jaw was clenched so hard that the muscles in his neck stood out like ropes. Telex continued. We have seen your kind before. Young species, full of fire and noise, who think they are special. Most of them destroy themselves within a few generations. The rest are crushed by older, stronger civilizations. Another counselor spoke up. She was covered in white fur, with eyes like black pools. Your planet sits in contested space. The Veltari Empire claims that region. They do not take kindly to new species building ships and sending signals. The Veltari, Vorath said, almost casually, have destroyed 14 species in the last 1,000 years. Some of them were stronger than you. All of them are gone now. Jinwoo listened to every word. He watched every face. He was building a picture in his mind of what the council truly was. It was not a family of equals working together. It was a collection of old powers protecting their own interests. They did not care about Earth. They did not care about humanity. They cared only about themselves. He took a breath and spoke again. We understand that we are young. We understand that there are dangers we cannot yet imagine. That is exactly why we came here. Not to beg, but to learn. To find our place among the stars. Vorath smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Your place is back on your little world, hiding and hoping that no one notices you. The Council does not accept species that cannot contribute, and you, human, have nothing to contribute. Then at least grant us the right to defend ourselves, Jinwoo said. If you will not protect us, give us the knowledge to protect ourselves. Give us access to your technology, your weapons, your shields. This time, Voreth's smile faded. He looked at Jinwoo with something that might have been surprise. "You are bold, little creature. I will give you that." He stood up from his seat, his robes falling around him like shadows. The chamber fell completely silent. When the High Counselor spoke, every word carried weight. "The Council will not share its technology with unproven species. You may defend yourselves however you wish, with whatever tools you have. But do not expect us to help you. Do not expect us to save you when the Veltari come." He waved one hand in dismissal. "Go home, enjoy whatever time you have left." Jinwoo did not move. "And if we survive? If we prove ourselves?" Telix laughed again. "You will not survive. The Veltari will crush you within a cycle. Your world will become dust, and your people will become a footnote in galactic history." Jinwoo nodded slowly. He looked around the chamber one last time, meeting as many eyes as he could. Then he turned to his crew. "We are leaving." They walked toward the exit in silence. The aliens watched them go, some with amusement, others with indifference. A few looked almost sorry. As they passed through the doors, an old voice called out, "Human." Jinwoo stopped and turned. An ancient creature sat in the highest corner of the chamber, wrapped in robes so old they seemed to be falling apart. His skin was gray and wrinkled, and his eyes were milky with age. But there was something sharp behind that clouded gaze. Elder Morven had not laughed. He had not spoken during the entire meeting. But now he looked directly at Jinwoo, and something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Or respect. Morvan said nothing more. He simply nodded once, very slowly. Jinwoo nodded back. Then he turned and led his crew away. The walk back to the horizon felt longer than before. The corridors that had seemed full of wonder now felt cold and hostile. Alien eyes watched them with new expressions. Word had already spread. The humans had been rejected. They were marked for death. Taiwu walked beside Jinwoo, his voice low. "What do we do now?" Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but hard as stone. "We go home. We tell Earth what happened. And then we prepare. Prepare for what?" Ginwee looked at his lieutenant. "For war." Yeonji had the horizon ready when they arrived. She could see the answer in their faces before anyone spoke. She said nothing, just powered up the engines and set a course for Earth. As the citadel grew smaller behind them, Hannah sat down beside Jinwoo. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "They laughed at us. Yes, they think we are going to die." "Yes." Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are they right?" Jinwoo looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Veltari were waiting. They had destroyed 14 species. They thought Earth would be number 15. "Oh," Jinwoo said. "They are not right. Humanity does not die icily. We never have." He turned to face his crew. "We have 3 months, maybe less. When we get home, everything changes. We build, we train, we fight." His voice grew stronger. "And when the Veltari come, they will learn what happens when you underestimate the human race." 3 months passed like water through open fingers. On Earth, everything changed, just as Jinwoo had promised. Factories that once made cars and phones now built warships. Universities that once taught art and history now trained soldiers and pilots. Every nation, every government. Every person old enough to understand knew what was coming. Admiral Soman Kong stood at the center of it all. She was a woman in her 50s, with iron gray hair cut short and eyes that could freeze fire. She had spent her life defending her country. Now, she would defend her entire world. The United Fleet grew day by day. Ships rose from the ground and took their places in orbit. They were not as elegant as the alien vessels Jinwoo had seen at the Citadel. They were rough and practical, built for one purpose: to kill anything that threatened Earth. Hannah worked with teams of scientists to study the alien signal. Pulling every scrap of useful information from its mathematical patterns, they learned about shields and weapons and engines. They could not copy everything, but they learned enough to make their ships dangerous. Yeonji trained new pilots. She pushed them hard, harder than they had ever been pushed. Some broke. The ones who remained became something new, something fierce. They would need to be. Taiwu organized the ground forces. If the Veltari broke through the fleet, soldiers would need to fight on the surface. He trained them in ways the enemy would not expect. He taught them to use the terrain, to hide, to strike from shadows, to never give up, even when everything seemed lost. And Jinwu traveled the world, speaking to leaders and citizens alike. He told them what he had seen. He told them what was coming. He told them that humanity had a choice: fight together or die alone. They chose to fight. On the 93rd day, the sky changed. Sensors detected them first. Hundreds of ships, then thousands, pouring out of a tear in space like wasps from a broken nest. They filled the screens with red dots, each one representing death. Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity and watched them come. Her face showed no fear. She had known this day would arrive. She had prepared for it. "All ships," she said, her voice calm and clear. "This is Admiral Kong. The enemy is here. Remember what you are fighting for. Remember who is watching." Today, we show the universe what humanity can do. General Kryn commanded the Veltari Armada. He was a creature of muscle and scale, with 6 eyes and a mouth full of teeth that had tasted the flesh of a dozen species. He had led invasions before. He had never lost when his ships emerged from the jump point and saw Earth's fleet waiting for them. He felt something close to amusement. The human ships were tiny, ugly things like toys built by children. His sensors counted them easily. Outnumbered, 3 to 1. Outgunned, outmatched. "Begin the attack," Kryn ordered. "Destroy them quickly. I want to land on their world before the day ends." Veltar ships surged forward, weapons charging, confident in their superiority. They did not know what they were facing. Youngji led the first wave. Her fighter was small and fast, dancing between enemy fire like a leaf in the wind. Behind her flew 300 pilots, each one ready to die for the world they loved. "Remember your training," Yanji said through the communication channel. "They are bigger. They are slower. Use it against them." The human fighters did not try to match the Veltarian firepower. Instead, they flew in patterns that confused the enemy targeting systems. They dove between larger ships, forcing the Veltari to choose between shooting and hitting their own vessels. They aimed for weak points that Hannah's research had identified: sensor arrays, engine ports, shield generators. Veltari ships began to fall. General Kryn watched the battle with growing confusion. His forces were taking losses, real losses, against a species that should have been crushed in minutes. Human ships rammed into his carriers, pilots ejecting at the last moment before the explosion. Human missiles flew in unpredictable paths, changing direction when shot at. Human tactics made no sense by any military standard he knew. "What are they doing?" one of his officers asked. Kryn had no answer. Admiral Soman commanded from the Unity, moving her fleet like pieces on a game board. She had studied every record of Veltari warfare she could find. She knew their patterns, their habits, their weaknesses, and she exploited them without mercy. Carrier Group 7, fall back and draw them toward the asteroid field. Fighter wings, prepare for ambush formation. Heavy cruisers, focus fire on their command ship. The Unity shook as enemy weapons struck its shields. Alarms sounded. Crew members fell. But Salman did not move. She had known there would be losses. She had accepted them long before the battle began. The fighting lasted for hours. Both sides bled. Human ships turned into fire and debris. Veltari vessels cracked and broke apart. The space between Earth and the enemy became a graveyard. But slowly, possibly, the tide began to turn. Kryn ordered the retreat just before midnight. His armada had lost a third of its ships. Not destroyed, but damaged, crippled, unable to continue the assault. He had expected to crush the humans in an hour. Instead, he had fought the longest battle of his career as his ships pulled back to regroup at a safe distance. He sent a message to the Galactic Council. His voice was flat, controlled, but those who knew him could hear the confusion underneath. These creatures fight like they have nothing to lose. They use tactics we have never seen. They do not surrender. They do not run. They throw themselves at us as if death means nothing to them." He paused. "I will need reinforcements." On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and saw flashes of light where the battle had raged. They did not know all the details yet. They did not know how many had died. But they knew one thing: humanity had survived the first strike. Admiral Min allowed herself one moment of quiet satisfaction. Then she turned to her officers. "Prepare what we can. Rest while we can. They will be back." And somewhere in the medical bay, with a bandage on her arm and blood on her flight suit, Yunji smiled. The war had just begun. The Veltari forward base sat on a moon at the edge of the solar system. It was a fortress of black metal and burning light, built to supply and repair Kryn's armada. Without it, his ships would have to travel weeks to reach the nearest Veltari territory. With it, he could strike Earth again and again, until nothing remained. Admiral Soman knew this. She had known it since the first battle ended. The enemy would not give her time to rebuild. They would not make the same mistake twice. If humanity wanted to survive, they could not wait for the next attack. They had to strike first. The plan was simple in concept, and nearly impossible in execution. A small force would jump to the moon, break through the base's defenses, land ground troops, and destroy the facility from within. Every military mind in the galaxy would have called it madness. The base was heavily defended. The Veltari fleet, even damaged, still outnumbered the human forces. The chances of success were almost zero, so Min presented the plan to Earth's leaders. They argued for hours. Some said it was suicide. Others said they had no choice. In the end, they voted yes. Volunteers stepped forward faster than anyone expected. Pilots, soldiers, engineers, medics. They knew they might not come back. They did not care. Jinwoo insisted on going. He had started this journey, and he would see it through. He would not ask others to risk what he was not willing to risk himself. "You are not a soldier," Salman told him. "No," he agreed. "But I am a human. And this is what humans do." She did not argue further. Before they left, Jinwoo recorded a message and sent it to the Citadel on every frequency the horizon could reach. He did not ask for help. He did not beg for mercy. He simply spoke. "This message is for the Galactic Council and anyone else who is listening. You laughed at us. You abandoned us. You thought we would die quietly in the dark. But Earth does not kneel. We do not surrender. We do not give up." His voice was steady, each word chosen with care. "We are going to destroy the Veltari forward base. And when we are done, we will come for anyone who stands with them. Remember this day? Remember what you could have prevented. Remember what you chose not to see." He ended the transmission. Hannah translated the message into every language she knew. It spread across the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, beings paused and listened. Most dismissed it as the boast of a dying species. A few wondered if they were wrong. The assault fleet jumped at dawn. They emerged from the jump into chaos. Veltari ships swarmed around the base, still repairing from the first battle, but ready to fight. Alarms screamed. Weapons fired. The sky filled with light and death. Yenji led the fighter screen, diving into the enemy formation with her pilots behind her. They had practiced this 100 times. They moved as one, each covering the other, each trusting the others with their lives. "Keep them busy," Soman ordered. "Clear a path for the landing ships." The battle was brutal. Human ships fell. Veltari ships fell. The numbers did not matter anymore. All that mattered was pushing forward, 1 meter at a time. Taiwu commanded the ground forces. His transport ship shook and rattled as it punched through the atmosphere, enemy fire scoring its hull. Half the soldiers on board were praying. The other half were checking their weapons. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. Taiwu stood. "Listen to me. The moment those doors open, you move. You do not stop. You do not hesitate. We have one chance to do this right." The ship hit the ground hard. The doors opened. Taiwu was the first one out. The surface of the moon was gray and lifeless. covered in rocks and craters. The Veltari base loomed ahead, its walls bristling with defensive guns. Enemy soldiers poured out to meet them, creatures of scale and fury, each one trained to kill. The humans met them, head dash on. It was not a clean fight. It was not a pretty fight. It was ugly and bloody and terrible. Soldiers fell on both sides. The ground turned dark with blood that was red and blood that was not. But the humans did not stop. They pushed forward, taking cover behind rocks, advancing in waves, covering each other as they moved. Taiwu led from the front, his rifle firing until it was empty. Then fighting with his hands until he could reload. Hannah had identified the base's weak point, its shield generator. Without it, the orbital ships could destroy the facility from above. The generator sat in the center of the base, protected by layers of walls and soldiers. Jinwoo led the team that went for the generator. He was not a soldier, but he had trained alongside them for months. He knew how to move, how to shoot, how to stay alive just a little longer. They fought through corridor after corridor, leaving bodies behind them. The Veltari threw everything they had at the intruders. But the humans would not be stopped. Finally, they reached the generator room. It was a massive machine, humming with power, surrounded by controls that none of them understood. They did not need to understand it. They just needed to destroy it. Ginwoo placed the explosives himself. His hands were steady, even though his heart was pounding. He thought of everyone who had died to get him here. He thought of everyone still fighting outside. He thought of Earth, hanging in space, waiting to learn if it would survive. "Everyone out," he said. Now, they ran. The explosion followed them like thunder, tearing through the generator and sending shockwaves through the entire base. The shield flickered and died. Above the moon, Admiral Salmon saw the signal. The shield was down. "All ships," she commanded. "Fire everything." The human fleet unleashed its full power. Missiles and beams and bombs rained down on the base, turning it into a sea of fire and rubble. The Veltari ships tried to intervene, but Yunji's fighters held them back long enough for the destruction to be complete. When the smoke cleared, the forward base was gone. General Kryn watched from his command ship, 6 eyes wide with something he had not felt in centuries fear on the surface. Taiwu soldiers raised a human flag over the ruins. It was torn and burned and covered in dirt, but it flew. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Galactic Council received Jinwoo's message, and for the first time, they did not laugh. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. A young species, barely 1,000 years old, had done the impossible. They had not only survived the Veltari assault, but had struck back and won. The Veltari forward base, a fortress that had stood for centuries, was nothing but ash and memory. On 100 worlds, beings who had dismissed Earth as a footnote began to pay attention. On 1,000 stations, traders and travelers shared stories of the humans who refused to die. And in the great chamber of the Citadel, the Galactic Council sat in uncomfortable silence. General Kryn was brought before them in chains. His 6 eyes were dull with defeat, his scales had lost their shine, and his mighty form seemed somehow smaller than before. He stood where Ginwoo had stood months ago, but there was no pride in his posture. Only shame. TIE Counselor Voreth looked down at the general with cold fury. "You promised us a quick victory. You said the humans would fall within a cycle. Instead, you have made us look like fools." Kryn said nothing. What could he say? He had underestimated the humans. He had paid the price. Ambassador Telex leaned forward. "The Veltari Empire demands answers. How did this happen? How did a species so primitive defeat one of our finest commanders?" An aide stepped forward with a data tablet. "We have analyzed the battle records. The humans used tactics we have never encountered. They sacrificed ships to damage ours. They flew their fighters directly into our engines. They fought on the ground with weapons that should not have been effective, using terrain and ambush in ways that broke every rule of modern warfare. They fight like animals," another counselor said with disgust. Elder Morvain, who had remained silent through countless meetings, finally spoke. His ancient voice was thin but carried clearly through the chamber. No, they fight like survivors. That is something very different. The council turned to look at him. It was rare for Morven to speak. When he did, even Vorath listened. I have lived longer than most of you can imagine, Morven continued. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species ascend to greatness and crumble to dust. And in all that time, I have learned one thing. He paused, his clouded eyes seeming to see something far away. Never underestimate a species that has survived its own nature. The humans nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times. Wars, diseases, disasters. They should have died long ago, but they did not. They adapted. They endured. That is not weakness. That is strength of a kind we have forgotten. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened. Every head turned. Captain Jinwoo Park walked in. He was not alone. Behind him came Admiral Somin Kong, her uniform decorated with new medals. Dr. Hannah Yoon walked at his right side, her eyes scanning the room with sharp intelligence. Lieutenant Tai Wuxin stood tall, his body bearing new scars from the battle on the moon. And pilot Yoon Ji-beek moved with the easy confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and smiled. They walked to the center of the chamber and stopped. Jinwoo looked up at Oreth. The High Counselor's face was difficult to read, but there was something new in his eyes. Not respect, perhaps, but recognition. You came back, Voreth said. I did, Jinwoo replied. His voice was calm, steady, the same voice he had used months ago when he asked for friendship. You told us to go home and die. We chose differently. Voreth shifted in his seat. The Council has discussed your situation. In light of recent events, we are prepared to offer Earth full membership. You will have access to our technology, our markets, our protection. You have proven yourselves worthy. A murmur ran through the chamber. This was unprecedented. A species that had been rejected, mocked, abandoned, was now being offered everything it had originally asked for. Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his crew, at the faces of the people who had bled beside him. Then he looked back at Voreth. No, the chamber fell silent. Even Voreth seemed surprised. No, the High Counselor repeated. Jinwoo shook his head. We did not come here to join you. We came to deliver a message. He stepped forward, his voice rising so that every being in the chamber could hear. Earth does not need your approval. We do not need your protection. We built our own strength when you abandoned us. We bled for our right to exist when you laughed at our deaths. He turned slowly, addressing the entire council. You call yourselves leaders of the galaxy, but you lead nothing. You hide behind your walls and your rules while young species suffer and die. You could have helped us. You chose not to. That choice has consequences. Ambassador Telex made a sound of outrage. You dare lecture us? You are nothing but primitives who got lucky. Lucky? Taiwu stepped forward, his voice hard. Luck did not win our battles. Blood won our battles. The blood of soldiers who knew they would not come home. The blood of pilots who flew into fire because someone had to. Do not speak to us of luck. Ginwu raised a hand, and Taiwu fell silent. The captain turned back to Voreth. Earth will not join the Galactic Council. But we will not stand alone either. He paused. We have been contacted by other species, worlds that you ignored, peoples that you abandoned. They have seen what we did, and they want to stand with us. Hannah stepped forward and activated a display. It showed a map of the galaxy with dozens of points highlighted in blue. 37 species have already agreed to join us. More are considering. Voreth's eyes widened. You cannot do this. You cannot build a rival power. We already have, Jinwu said simply. We call it the Free Worlds Accord. It is open to any species that believes in standing together rather than standing above. We will protect each other. We will help each other grow. And we will not abandon anyone the way you abandoned us. He turned to leave, his crew falling in behind him. At the doorway, he stopped and looked back one last time. You could have had us as friends, Voreth. Remember that. Then he was gone. Elder Morvan watched the humans leave, and something like a smile crossed his ancient face. He looked at Vorath, who sat frozen on his throne, and spoke softly. I told you once. Never underestimate the young ones. The free world's accord grew stronger with each passing year. Earth became its heart, a beacon for the lost and the forgotten. And across the galaxy, the story was told again and again of a small world that was mocked and abandoned. Of a people who refused to kneel, and of the day humanity stood up and changed everything. They would never kneel again.